welcome back to probably the most goddamn exciting month in the history of podcasts. Here at the Film Alchemist podcast, the show where we take the movies we love, break them apart to find out what gives them their magic. I'm your host, Josh Griffey, who is to be held the most on high for the entire month, joined as always by my friend, co-host, and kneeler beforeth me.
I regret this immediately, Alex Dandino.
Welcome to the month of my birth. The stars aligned. The nether region to the void was ripped asunder, and out came me, your old friend Griff. So that's what we're doing here. But
thanks,
before Alex can grovel and kneel at the altar of me, a little bit of business, guys. It's official. We're on Patreon. If you also want to give a gift to me, which of course you do, and also Alex. Alex is also a part of the gift. It's a 2-for-1. Go over to patreon.com/filmalchemistpod. It's the absolute best way to help the show. It's the absolute best way to make sure the show is exactly what you want. Guys, every month you get access to voting on the movies that you want to hear us talk about in a Patreon exclusive library. As you climb the system, sometimes you even get to pick the very movies that you want us to discuss. We have a great community we're building over there, so for as little as $1 a month, and we assure you, even $1 a month is so appreciated, you can get in, meet the community, see what we're working on. We got lots of cool stuff we're doing over there. Some new series that should be rolling out soon. Our Tales from the Crypt series was a little hijacked by our old nemesis COVID-19. So hopefully we'll be back on track soon, as long as everyone is happy and healthy, all that good shit. But yeah, patreon.com/filmalchemistpod. Join Alex in exalting me.
Oh, no. Oh, we're back on this. Okay.
All right, go to YouTube so you can see my face. You can get, like, stills of my face, make little altars with those cool sex candles.
Actually, you can't because all of the stills we have are plastered.
How dare you? Film Alchemist Pod, or Film Alchemist, that's it. The YouTube channel so you can make your sex candle altar. Make sure you email me, filmalchemistpod@gmail.com, if you like to write long, gushing emails full of sweet nothings and tributes. Find us on all the social media. You can do the same thing there, right? Send it for the whole world to see. That's cool, too. Make sure you leave us a rating and review. That's the simplest, easiest gift you can give the show. Quick 5-star, couple sentences why you like the show. All right. Alex, slide up a pillow. I don't want your knees to hurt. Wash upon me.
I hate you.
Wash upon me, Alex.
No, I love you. It's your birthday month. This is so exciting. Griff.
I think this is scary to make a precedent. 2 months of the year.
I actually don't. This is actually on par with the entertainment I have during October, I'll be honest.
Oh,
this
no.
is what's fun about this is for once, like, we get to, it's not necessarily a surprise because we record all these in advance, but this month the pod gifts Griff. You know what I mean? Like, that's a really important thing.
Maybe the pod kneels before Griff. Maybe we could work on that.
The pod gifts. We're not kneeling. We're good.
All right, we've got a month to workshop and whiteboard this. That's fine.
It's mostly written out. This month is all about our friend, our loved one, Joshua Young Griffey. His middle name's not Young, but I just wanted to say Young.
Nor am I young, so this is double.
Yeah, Griffey listens to a lot of what was that band who sang the Young song? I don't know. Whatever.
Yeah, I know
Fun.
them for sure.
There it is. Yep, I knew it. See, I'm very hip. I'm very with it. It's a very popular song still.
Me too. I fucking love those guys.
So I have concocted a curation of just gifts for you from some of our friends of the pod. Some of our friends that don't necessarily listen to the pod but live with us even have curated some movies for you this month.
Oh my.
I'm actually, this is fun. You don't, so other than the one that we've watched, you don't know the other ones yet. So I'm actually going to,
when we're about to record, you say, hey, this is the movie you have to watch. This is your first gift. That's all I know so far is today's movie.
Yes. So the movie we're talking about tonight, obviously Adrian Lynn's, Jacob's Ladder, which is Griffey's first gift from, actually a co-gift from me and our friend Carmelita Valdez-McCoy.
Just a delightful gift. You guys really know me well.
I do.
I fucking love Jacob's Ladder. I'm very excited.
I'm very excited to talk to you about this movie because I actually had never watched this movie before.
Really?
I think I have seen like clips out of context when I was younger, like because it's just one of those movies that pops up on TV sometimes, and then like I mashed. It's one of those things.
The weirdest, like, random stumble upon movie.
When I was young, I loved just watching AMC and TCM. So I've seen a lot of pieces of movies that I would have never watched otherwise. And this is definitely one of them. So it was fun to revisit this and check it out. Second movie is actually from your wife.
Oh, you're telling me all 4 right now. This
I'm going to tell you all 4.
Fucking exciting. Okay.
Yeah, we're gonna set up the month here because you got to know. The second one's from actually your wife, Amy. We're watching Orange County.
So the other day in the car, she's like, "You know what movie I picked?" And I was like, "Highlander, of course." And she's like, and I was like, "Oh, it's a gift for you movie." Okay, so now I see this is actually one of our like first dates. This was like a very important seminal like. We knew that we had like
this
similar
is good.
interests.
I didn't know that. That makes
this was a big like Hallmark movie for us. We love that movie, so that's very cool.
Perfect. The next one is actually a movie that you and I were always going to talk about. You always say, "Hey, let's watch this. Let's do it for the pod." It's actually a more recent one, Werewolves Within. Which is one that you and I
love that movie. Great choice.
And finally, a weird one that we talked about recently. In connection to a movie that I had never wanted to watch, but Dogville. We're going to talk about Dogville.
Hey, all right, what a month! You know what I should do is I should throw out the double feature for our dear patrons and just get another gift for me. I like this. I finally hit the jackpot with the 5
What a June! What a June!
What a June! So this is a great list. I love these. Fuck yeah! But tonight we begin. So I'm kind of excited that you'd never seen this, right? Because I found this movie, I feel like, at the perfect age. Although rewatching it, I realized my youth was super working against me, and I wasn't really comprehending a lot of what was going on.
Right.
So I found it at a young age, right, where you're just like, sweet, drug movie, right? You're like, drugs, partying, scary monster shit, right? That's how I watched it young.
Of course.
Also, I found this like right at that about to start college age. And for those of you who are my age, right, our senior year of high school was 9/11. And so there's a lot of these big scary things happening in the world. We had this whole kind of false flag operation, right, trying to do the WMD shit. It was one of the first times in my young life that you realized there was bigger nefarious elements at play. That even our own government and trusted institutions would lie to your face just blatantly like that, right? And, you know, this movie obviously dealing with Vietnam, which was that generation's kind of same version. So I saw this at an age where, yeah, you're very conspiratorial, right? You're getting to college, so everyone's more open to new ideas. You're personally just experimenting with everything.
Right. A lot of politics when you're young.
Yeah, right. We used to talk politics and shit. I didn't know anything about but you're just like, let's get stoned and like pretend we're in college, right? Let's do what we do and like college of ideas, right? Just stupid shit. So I saw this movie at that age where I was beginning to see that my own reality, right? This, you know, small town Midwestern kid, I had it all figured out. You're like, oh fuck, there's like a whole other deal going on that I had no idea existed, and I've just been living amongst that unaware. So this movie hit me at a perfect time, and although I don't think I appreciated some of the more adult themes that really work for me at this age, right? Especially, I totally fucking forgot. I've been throwing a lot of dead children movies at us lately, and it's not on purpose. I fucking swear to God.
A lot of dead kids in this last run.
It's like a lot, and I hate it. And I forgot
a lot on the scoreboard here.
I forgot completely about this whole subplot of the movie. But that kind of stuff for me today, this movie, as much as I loved it back then, I told you this would be our get home from the bar really late. And we're just like finishing off whatever booze would be in our apartment. We're eating like, you know, $30 of Taco Bell you bought with laundry quarters. And you're like, let's watch Jacob's Ladder, man. Just smoking joints and just like, yeah, man, we fucking get it. Yeah. This was a very different experience. So Alex, as a first timer, what did you make of Jacob's Ladder?
It's weird because I watched that Deepwater movie with
the fact that I had to go back and relook at Adrian Lynn's credits.
Yeah. Like he's
awesome. A lot of movies I love, but like the fact that this movie exists in that list It's so strange to me. It's so strange.
It is, and I think that's what's interesting because, like, you think about like his oeuvre really is not this like at all.
No, it's kind of erotic thriller, right?
Like,
A lot of it.
Yeah, like he does erotic thrillers. Like he did The Crying Game, and then obviously most recently Deepwater. But like this was a very different movie. Yeah, like as an adult, I imagine watching this when you're young and seeing this at that age. Like if I had seen this and really sat down and watched it when I was super young. Not super young, but like high school age, like probably right, like pre-film school. Yeah, this would have rocked me in a way that I would have been like, whoa, like that is fucking trippy as hell, man. Today, it was a very interesting experience. Like, yeah, I'm a dad, and that hit a lot different than I thought it would. I haven't seen young Tim Robbins in a long time. I don't know why, but I just don't watch like young Tim Robbins movies. Like the last one we watched was Arlington Road, and he's like middle aged. Like young Tim Robbins, really was going for broke here. Like
this was
really
1990, so before his really big stuff. I think this is even before Bull Durham, which was the first movie I remember loving him in.
I think this is it before Bull Durham? I think
Bull Durham was like 93. Another movie we need to discuss for sure. But
it's like this, like, this is like before Hudsucker Proxy. Like there's a lot, but the performance is really, and then like a lot of the macabre imagery is really fascinating. And like what I like is that it's really interestingly not beating anything over the head. Like it's very oddly subtle for like scenes where they're very intense. It's still very subtle. It's really interesting. And then, like, I also realized this is the blueprint for so many.
How
many, like, I mean, between, like, we both went to film school. Like, how many short films were like, did you see Jacob's Ladder? I'm making a fucking short film just like that.
Yeah. This movie, I feel like, is kind of like the Sparks, right? The band. Where it's like a lot of people have been influenced by this movie and probably don't even fucking know it because it just got in the veins.
You know what it reminded me of? And I thought about this today, right before we did the show, was that Black Mirror episode with Wyatt Russell. I was like, oh, like that's where this starts. Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Black Mirror also might be coming to our Patreon soon. There's a new season announced. So maybe you should join up. Patreon.com/FilmAlchemist. Give me gifts. That's neither here nor there. I think it is funny though, because we were talking about Adrian Lynn's like erotic thriller fucking filmography. And I was like, I don't know. I was watching this movie. I was like, I don't know if there's a movie I've ever seen where every person looks as just grotesquely unfuckable as this movie. Yeah. Like everyone in this movie is so pale and so sweaty and so shaggy. Like, even Ving Rhames, right? Like, by the end of the movie, when you're doing, like, funeral Ving Rhames, I'm like, how do you take the fucking sex magnetism from Ving Rhames even?
Well, like, you think about, okay, Flashdance, 9.5 weeks, Fatal Attraction,
fucking
which we
Fatal
talked
Attraction,
about,
man.
Indecent Proposal. Like, these movies are highly erotic movies.
This is what our parents watched so that they could try to go one more round and stave off divorce. These were the movies they watched.
And we're choosing, and then smack dab, and let's see, like that is smack dab in the middle too. Like he made Jacob's Ladder right after Fatal Attraction, and then right after that he made Indecent Proposal and Lolita. Like that's what this guy does.
That's
not Jacob's Ladder. So to watch it in that context is really fascinating.
Yeah, well, I think to your point about the imagery, right? Because this was such a different experience for me because I remember this movie as this almost Lovecraftian horror movie, right?
Oh, totally.
So from my childhood, this was a movie of, because H.P. Lovecraft is famous for, besides being like a horrible bigot and racist.
A huge racist, yes.
He is famous for, he kind of had this great concept of the seeker, right? The outsider seeker goes to a place and somehow pierces the veil, right? He sees this other world, right? He was kind of the genesis of this cosmic horror, right? Lovecraft got a lot of miles out of doing an unimaginable shape, right? Like that kind of shit where it was our imagination, right? Just these blobs of flesh and tentacle, whatever. So when I was thinking back and I was like, oh, we're going to rewatch Jacob's Ladder. I'm like, I remember the tail scene, right? You remember some of this stuff. I was stunned watching it this time how little of that imagery actually exist in the movie.
Yeah.
I had written this off as like, all right, start of the movie, Nam, entire last like hour and a half is just wild ass hallucinations. And that is not the movie that we're watching at all.
No.
But I think it's that point though that it's used to a perfect effect, right? To your point, it's not banging you over the head. When it hits, it's fucking scary and it gets in there, but that's not really the meat of the film.
No, I mean, really what it is a psychological... It's like a psychological thriller with these like really specific horror elements that don't overwhelm the story at all. Like it's really about like this journey of acceptance almost, but not really. I don't know. We'll get into that, but it's a very fascinating movie. Like there's just so many, especially I watched it twice because I was like, I have to go back and rewatch it to like, and there is a lot of like really specific moments. I'm like, oh wow, they drop the hint like immediately right here. Like there's a lot of these little beats that make more sense.
Mm-hmm.
And when you watch it a second time, but it was, again, it's just a really fascinating movie and not at all what I think many people would assume because it would get lumped in with that sort of horror genre. And I think like it's like this, I think personally this and people would confuse this a lot of the time with oh shit, we watched it for the pod too for October. Well, with Bill Pullman. Why can't I remember the name right?
Frailty?
No, with Bill Pullman, not
Bill Pullman.
Either way, doesn't matter. Regardless, the movie that I think people expect is very different than what they get, and I loved that. Like, I expected to strap in for something very different than what I ended up with, and like again, there's a lot of threads to pull out. It's very interesting.
Serpent in the Rainbow. That's what you were talking about.
That's what it is. Serpent in the Rainbow and Jacob's Ladder for
very
some reason
similar vibes. Yeah,
always meld together in my mind, and I don't know if that happens to anybody else, but.
Well, I think like that one, this Altered States, right? These great explorations of, because this is one of the things that's really fun and playful in this movie, right? I've recently been rereading this book, God Is Not Great, right? The Christopher Hitchens book.
Oh, great.
And one of the things, not to offend anyone, right? But it's just interesting in light of the way our world is going to kind of give it a reread. But anyways, one of the kind of thesis of that book, right, and the idea of religions in general is how it's so fucking scary to think that we have no like groundwork, right? That we don't know anything. We're so insignificant. None of this might matter at all. So religion is this great stopgap, right? That comes in and someone knows what's going on. So everything's all cool, right?
Right.
But what that leads to is these people that I think one of the things Hutchins said that's really interesting, right, is like, imagine if you knew someone, like you had the secret to eternal happiness. Like someone came down like, hey man, here's the fucking secret. You're all good, right? Everything's fucking cool. Wouldn't you imagine those people are happier and having more fun, right? And not just like miserable cunts. And I was like, that's a really good way to look at it. And this movie plays with that, whether it's the military or being a father or a partner, that complete loss of control that we feel really early in the film, right? It happens almost within the first 5 to 10 minutes, right? We're in Vietnam. We know that Tim Robbins got hit by a bullet or something, right? As he falls back, boom, he's in bed with his girlfriend, right? And so immediately the movie is telling us that you will never have your foot in reality. And the debate that we'll eventually like get to by the end of the movie is, what do we think the chronology of this is? What do we think happened, right?
Right.
And I think that there are so few movies that actually take us out of a shared and established reality that I think some of that is also why I remembered it being so terrifying. And honestly, it's not less terrifying now because there's not as much monsters, because you add in the ghastly visage of your fucking child, and that does plenty to fucking scare me now. But I think that maybe this is probably like second best to Highlander of just time jumping cuts of all time. Like the time jumping edits in this movie are fucking amazing.
They work really well. I mean, for a movie that is made in 1990, like between that and then all the in-camera special effects, which like none of it's, again, is 90s. So not 1990, no CGI. It's really fascinating to watch those kinds of things. But yeah, thematically the time jumps work for me. Like I love I love the little subtle grotesqueries though that happen. Like when when he wakes up on the subway and he's about to walk off and just sees like the tentacle, I'm like, whoa, that is fucking weird, man. And then it's never addressed until like halfway through the movie. And I'm like, but then it's not really addressed. You're just like a thing. What it is like that moment is, and that's at the beginning of the movie, but that moment alone is one of those things where I'm like, okay, we have absolutely no idea what's real and what's not. Like we're just going on this fucking journey with this guy, period. Like,
yeah, and they're not even dissimilar moments, right? Like one of the most jarring ones is when Tim Robbins come home and the girlfriend's like, man, you look like shit. And he goes, thanks. And he gets in the shower and she's like, all right, let's fuck in the shower. Yeah. And immediately the hard cut from like, I'm like, he's just falling back on the jungle floor going, help me. And I was like, is this like a Gatorade commercial? Like he fucks so hard he needs electrolytes, or
no, it's a Mentos
is this
thing,
just like the jungle's also wet? Like I have no idea, because that was one of the earlier ones where you're like, oh, this isn't just like a movement cut, right? Like this is really jarring you from happy to the saddest you've ever been. And I think that jumping back and forth, the scene that actually this time was really haunting me is when they kept cutting back to that shot, right? It reminded me of that famous Twilight Zone episode, right? Occurrence at Owl Creek, I think is what it was called, where I believe it's about a prisoner who's getting hanged and he tries to escape, right? And there's a shot, if I remember right. Oh, yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
No, you're right. It's based on, I believe, an Ambrose Bierce story, which is interesting because that's something that inspired Adrian Lyne for this movie.
Yeah, and so there's a scene, if I remember right, where we don't know if the guy's alive or dead, right? He was going to get hanged. He's trying to escape. And there's like this floating down the river shot looking up at foliage. That shot exists in this movie, right? Where we're kind of walking through this tree line. It doesn't look like jungle, but it's a tree line, right? And it seems like we hear the muttering of soldiers trying to save, presumably, Tim Robbins, right? And the way they keep dropping that one in at these really interesting moments, right? That really fucked with me. So I guess we'll just do this up front, right? The ending of the movie is a gigantic fucking question mark, right?
Okay.
I think, right? I guess this will be the argument, right? Because I would imagine most people go, oh, he was dead the whole time. He's dreaming. Spoilers. I don't even say spoilers. It's my birthday, and this movie's old as fuck. But no, so at the last scene of the movie is he's smiling dead in Nam, right? I find that hard to accept that that's actually where this movie ends, right? That this is a movie about a soldier who gets shot in Nam and is going back through this haunted house version of his life, right? Because that doesn't explain away the girlfriend. That doesn't explain away the scientist who tells him about the ladder, right? The ladder drug and all this. Do you think that he actually died in Nam, or did he die in New York from his psychosis and all that kind of stuff, and this was his last moment, right? Kind of maybe admitting to us both are true, right? That the Jacob Singer he was died in Nam, but do you think his physical body died in Nam or no?
I think what we're watching is, I mean, for me, what it is yeah, like it's the blink of an eye. Like that's what the movie is. Like this 2-hour movie takes place in the 2 minutes they're trying to save him. There's a lot of clues to that for me. Like when he goes to see Lewis being backlit so brightly, you're like, this is
fucking
so
Lewis in this movie, man.
Danny
Unsung
Aiello.
MVP. He's so fucking good, and when he busts him
so
out
good.
of that hospital, I mean that scene is just money. I'll wrap this around your neck. He got very upset. And yeah, he's just like a chiropractor. No, he's like, yeah, you're like a cherub, right?
Yeah, exactly. There's all this like really specific stuff that gets dropped for particularly Lewis. But I mean, there's like bright light effects that I'm like, this is interesting because like this is actually what I thought about the most was the episode, there's like a 3 episode arc the season The Sopranos when Tony gets shot
Yeah.
and he's in a coma. Like all those little visual clues we have in that show particularly, like they use, like Jacob's Ladder does the same stuff. Like there's all these little visual clues, like when he's at that party where he starts seeing like this, like all the tentacles and shit and everyone's like turning into monsters, and like all these flashes of light are literally them checking his like pupils to see if they've dilated and so on and so forth.
That
It's
one
also
has a
him.
great one at the end where it's like the party goers are over him like the
Yeah.
soldiers.
But he's also, but to me,
Okay.
he does. Yes. Like to me, this is absolutely where he dies. Like
So-
for me, all of it makes sense because
This is the weird part, though, because that just means that. So Jacob's hell is having had to move in with his coworker that
I
he's
just
definitely
don't see-
thought about fucking.
But see, I don't think it's hell at all.
Okay, so we'll clarify this too, right? Danny Aiello talks about this philosopher who had this idea, right? That the only thing that burns in hell, I've got it paraphrasing, right, is the part of you that
Eckhart.
won't let go of life, right?
Right.
They're not punishing you, they're freeing your soul. If you've made your peace, the devils are really angels freeing you from the earth.
Right.
I think that's a really cool idea. Obviously, Jacob's Ladder is a biblical, image of a stairway to heaven, right? All that shit,
Right.
fine. I think that's a little sloppy, man. I actually think he makes it back to New York and dies in New York.
I'll tell you why I don't. I'll tell you why I don't like that. To be honest,
Okay.
is because it's because Jacob, when he wakes up in New York after the Vietnam scene, is a postman. Now, I don't live in New York. I've never lived in New York. I've visited New York. It is a weird thing to me to see a postman driving around New York. Like, it's just not a thing you see. I'm used to seeing them walk and so on and so forth. For me,
So his hell is that he gets a special whip to ride around?
no, that's not what I'm getting at. But for me, what we do also never see is Jacob actually delivering mail.
We see him going to the office and
We
not
see him
working
going
and
to the
having a red
office.
flag relationship with a coworker.
Yes, we see him going to the office, having an HR problem relationship with a coworker. We never see him actually delivering mail, though, which to me, like,
Come on.
I thought about this. Like, to me, like, that is the job of a postman. He's either always like taking a double shift, but we never see him actually, I'm going to make like overtime. Someone is always calling out sick. Like, what it is like a postman's job, like, is never done. He's always having to do these things. That is his spirit hanging on. It's this job, this horrible working man job, but that he like doesn't really enjoy. He's simply doing it as a wait station till whatever. He's doing it to he's doing it to avoid having to actually deal with what we got to talk more about the son and the wife and that stuff, because that's the part I'm like, is that part real? That seems odd. That's the part that I couldn't synthesize whether it was real or not, actually.
I think he was a postman because, again, I could not for the life of me stretch my mind out to where there would be any form of postal symbolism in this fucking journey, right? The one time when he passes out in the cab and they're, welcome back, Dr. Singer, and he goes to his old life. He walks into that house comfortable as fuck, right? That feels like the life he had. That perhaps he was a doctor. He had this family. It went fucking south, right? There's even a scene somewhere in this vicinity of the film. And he's down in the hospital, right? And he passes out and he sees his wife, right? And they're in bed and he's like, oh, I fucked that girl down at the office.
Yeah.
And I was like, but we saw her at the post office, but maybe she was like a secretary at his work, whatever, right? She worked with a nurse, whatever. He wakes up and he's back in the hospital. But his wife and the two kids come in and they're just like, we heard what happened. I so love you. There's a voice from off camera that says, dream on. So to me, that cannot be the base reality that is Jacob's last touchstone to me. Right?
You mean the family or
I don't think the family. My theory of the movie is that when his son died, he was so fucking broken. Right? I remember even Broadchurch brought this up, right? When parents lose a kid, 80+% of them divorce because they can't fucking stand it. You look at your partner and you'll see parts of your child, or, you guys can't help but blame each other, and, it's so unfair. It's just fucking horrible. I can't even fucking fathom, right?
No.
So he does that. He leaves. He goes to Vietnam, right? Like, I'll do this instead. Probably hoping to die, right? Like, probably hoping that his pain and suffering will come to an end. Because I think the choice of suicide, it's very flippantly shown in movies a lot. That's a big fucking choice, right? So this guy's just going to put himself in danger. I think he does come back from Nam and is just fucking rebooting, right? Because to me, if this is just him imagining, right, besides not being able to place why the fuck he's a postal worker, those little moments of his ex-wife sends him the envelope of pictures.
Postal worker.
Well, I mean, you could say that's like my dad talking about, like, you ever see road crews? Why are they always leaning on shovels, right? Like, I don't see them always working, but I see roads.
That is not what I'm getting at. That part, like, it's not a matter of laziness. What I'm saying is there's always an excuse. Like, he's always having to go in and sub for someone. Like, he even says he's like, this guy's sick. He's always sick. Like, there's something about that to me that rang true of, like, that is someone who's working a job that keeps them working, keeps their mind off what really is happening to them, and so on and so forth.
So walk me through what you think's happened. One of my favorite scenes in the movie, right, is when his old army buddy finds him, right, and they meet at the bar.
Right.
That moment of catharsis when I don't remember his name. The actor has like the fucking shifty eyes.
Pruitt Taylor Vince.
Yes, wonderful character actor, right? You guys know I don't fucking know names. I'm not going to snap it up because it's my birthday celebration.
That's why I'm here. It's your birthday. I'm here to pick up the slack.
You know everyone's names, and I know none of them. But when they're at that bar, right, that moment of catharsis when he's, like, they're coming for me everywhere. I can't rest. I feel fucking terrible, right? And he goes, I see them too. There's a wonderful beat where Pruitt, whatever his name is, the fucking military guy, all of that melts through him, right? That, oh my God, it's not just me. Someone sees me. Someone believes me. And Tim Robbins needed that too, right? That moment, if it's just part of a fever dream, loses a lot of its impact to me, right? Like those moments with him and his fellow soldiers at the funeral, trying to get the lawyer, but then being scared off. Like, I understand what people will say, right? The whole, Men in Black government operative shit is pretty... It feels surreal, right? I'll give you that, right? When he falls out of the car in front of Santa Claus and whatever.
I wouldn't even go as far as saying it's surreal. Like, surreal, I think, is honestly, like, not the way... Like, what's interesting
it's weird that in this movie, that kind of stuff sticks out as like, yeah, I don't buy it.
But that's I totally agree though. Like that actually is the part of the movie where I was like, this is the part that makes no sense, is like in a movie like this that's really about the metaphysical, turning like all of a sudden like turning on a dime and it being like a government conspiracy seems very off, like very like, did we just like veer into another like genre for some reason? Like, do we not? But like it's purposeful though, and I like that a lot. Is for me, what Jacob's Ladder does is shifts so violently in that direction. It's sort of the way like Hereditary like takes you off your feet. Not nearly as effective, but it's the same vibe, which is like, oh wow, this is a completely different movie than I thought it was. Like I'm stepping into something very different. But for it to do that and for it not to be the thing, that's the hard thing to grapple with, is like to not commit to the bit essentially is the more uncomfortable thing about, oh, it's a government conspiracy, black hats, these kinds of things. Like that is a complicated thing to throw in like the back third of the movie. But that's also why, to me, the fever dream aspect, one, really doesn't like that part, like his performance, like him seeing his friends and those kinds of things. If you ascribe to the theory that he's literally like 2 minutes he's in the middle of dying, it makes perfect sense to me. It doesn't necessarily lessen the impact of that performance or like that confession of like, I'm experiencing this too, because what he's trying to do is grapple with the fact, this is a guy who's trying to essentially grapple with the fact that he's dying. So for him to grasp to the people he knows and loves and has become close with makes total sense to me. But
I agree in some bit.
If you go with that.
I agree when you talk about like the scenes with his family feel very much ethereal, right? Like those feel...
Oh, totally.
That's not a shared physicality, right? That is something, metaphysical, as you said. The stuff with the soldiers and the girlfriend does not fit that bill. When he's having his fever dream and they're pouring ice on him, that is not a scene that
with
a
Louis
man,
Black as the doctor.
Yeah, that's not a scene that a man on his deathbed is conjuring, right? Of him melting 50 pounds of ice, right? So to me, that is a reality that had to exist somewhere. Now, could you argue that that was his life before he went to Vietnam, right? That shit fell apart and he went there and then that came. Maybe. I mean, I think that's the problem, right? It gets a little sludgy at the end, right? For lack of a better word.
You said it best. When like it happens at the party and then it happens when they're putting all the ice in the ice bath where people are hovering over him, which is
the party moment where she says you're already dead is, that feels a little on the nose.
Pretty
right?
on the nose.
Yeah.
But like the ice bath scene though is something that I mean, Amy's a nurse. That happens in hospitals. You have to cool people down with ice packs all the time.
Right, but I'm saying, and I know he was a doctor, right? That's kind of the other argument I'm sure people would levy against me is that he's a doctor, so inventing this medical malady that needs an emergency fix as he's dying seems pretty spot on. So I guess, I can see where people go that way. It doesn't feel authentic to me to accept that that is what he's conjuring up. I would like to think that if I'm on my deathbed, right, the things I will be thinking about are my childhood, my parents, my siblings, my wife, my kids, those kind of things, right? And traumas that come with those. I don't think I'll be inventing a government conspiracy of this,
the
mayhem.
Key element is you're on your deathbed. You're on your death. Like if you're saying you're on your deathbed, not saying it's by choice, but you are in a comfortable place already. That, of course, is what you're going to think about. Like, he is in the Mekong Delta. He has been shot. He's been stabbed. Like, he is going through something that neither of us can fathom because, neither of us have died before, but also...
the entire life replays, in the blink.
Yeah, it's a whole other thing. So, like, to me, the ethereal nature of what he's going through, that's the harder part about Jacob's Ladder, I think, and that's, like, the more interesting thing about what we're talking about, which is the subjective nature of death and the subjective nature of like what death does to you as it's occurring. Like your synapses are firing, like everything is going through your brain, like your endorphin rush is off the charts. I have no idea what I would be thinking of, but what I would definitely be doing is trying not to die. I'll say that. Unless I'm like,
I think
if I was a Vietnam veteran,
I also think to tweak that a little bit is that you are dying, right? You're not trying not to die. It's just a matter of time. I think, again, the thought that he's not actually a mailman and goes through some of that is probably like the one black eye on the movie to me. Because taking that away, I feel like really hurts a lot of the dramatic impact of some of the scenes, right? Like, there are obviously great scenes, right? When he goes to the hospital and he slipped and his back's all fucked up. I like that scene of this man who's really at his wit's end and has no idea where to put his feet, being laid out and can't move, right?
Right.
And then, you get your scenes where they take, like, wow, there's a lot of fucking moisture in this sub-basement. That's very strange. Oh, God. Now they're, like, pushing through, there's psycho ward, right? Or mental wards, whatever the proper phrasing. Yeah, psych ward. Whatever the proper phrasing is, right? Lady's breastfeeding a baby. You're like, that seems not right. Oh, there's dead limbs and blood everywhere, right? It's like Leatherface's masturbatorium. They're just pushing it everywhere. His girlfriend being the nurse, right, could harken back to where he actually met her. Sure. Those scenes are obviously hellacious images, right? This is like a Dante's Inferno moment where he is walking through some layer of his hell, right? Trying to release what is, right? That's the part of the film that I don't think settles with the end, is if the idea is these shaking faceless monsters, right, look like demons. And even in that hospital scene, right, there's a quadriplegic African-American faceless creature, right? That could be one of his fellow soldiers in Vietnam, right? That would make sense.
Sure.
The thing is, what is he releasing? What is he holding on to about being that fucking shitty postman, right? Everything else in the movie makes perfect fucking sense, right? And when you build to this finale of him and his son holding. I can't remember the line. I was fucking weeping when it happened because I just don't remember. And Tim Robbins just breaks down and cries, man. And his kid does that thing that if you've been a parent, you know that moment where you're just really fucking broken down. And no matter what, if your kid's been a dick or whatever, right? They just give you that little hug, right? And the way their little arms feel wrapped around you, it's just one of those great joys of life, right?
Yes.
And he just says,
absolutely.
It's okay, let's go up. And they fucking walk up the stairs together, fade to white. He's dead and numb, right? That moment is really fucking beautiful. Again, that kind of stuff all tracks, right? It's the fucking postman stuff. I have to accept for me that the postman life is a real life. I have to know that.
I just don't think I don't have to, because quite frankly, it makes it, I'm not saying that we don't have a choice in what we see before we die.
Yeah.
But in the context of Jacob's Ladder, I'm not sure it necessarily is that. I'm not necessarily sure that that's the case. Like,
yeah. And to be fair, this is the fight I've had about this movie since first seeing it.
Sure.
And essentially no one agrees with me that him being a postman matters, but to me it's not even the fucking job. It's the.
But I mean, to me, what it is about the weight. It's about the weight. That's what it is. Like, people can be career postmen, I'm sure, but
my
also,
father-in-law, Sam's dad, a lot of our family.
I mean, I'll say this, like, what I don't.
Maybe that's why it matters to me. There's so many.
You know what else though is? I'll say this. So this movie came out in 1990, which is still fairly like. We're like, you and I were not born of that era, but like our concept of the Vietnam War is so historical at this point. Like,
mine is pretty much just movies. Yeah. Like,
yeah, mine is
movies.
almost entirely movies. Like, I don't have family member. Like, my father wasn't drafted. Like, like people who like my family wasn't drafted. Like, for some reason, I think it was like the year that they stopped drafting people was the year that my father turned like 17 or 18 when he was available to be drafted. So like, my parents don't have Vietnam War stories, those kinds of things. I don't know. It's but maybe there's something in that, which is you take the job that when you get home, like that's the job that, doesn't require a lot of effort, like you get paid enough. It requires minimal effort. It requires minimal brain power because you've seen some horrible, horrible things.
Yeah. Well, also a lot. I mean, that's kind of the Rambo thing, right? A lot of these guys came back and were treated as villains, right? They were just they signed up to, fight for our country and the Patriot, and they come back completely disillusioned and broken.
Right.
So, I mean, but there's just interesting moments, right? Like when he sees the flashback of Gabe, right?
Mm-hmm.
We can imagine that's not something he saw firsthand, right? Or else you would be protecting your kid, it feels like.
Sure.
And they just have that hardest cut, one of the hardest cuts in movies, when that fucking tire is just rolling over the bike, right? So you're like, there's some kind of, if not supernatural, that's him punishing himself with that image, right?
Oh, yeah.
When he sees his family saying goodbye and the kid's like, hang in there, Dad, they're having a laugh, right? And there's that lower tone voice, dream on.
Yeah.
Who's saying that, right? Is he his own? I guess the movie posits he's his own devil, right?
I mean, I think the movie posits that any of us would be saying stuff like that to ourselves. Like, there's a level of like, they point out like, yeah, he has this level of guilt because of what happened to Gabe. So him running from that kind of thing again makes total sense to me. That yeah, like the running you would do when you're about to die would be like, oh, I'm a guy living in an apartment in Brooklyn with a girl, and that's the wait station before things start happening.
It's too grungy, man. It's too real. He lived that postal life. He fucking lived that postal life. I don't think he did, to be honest with you. You think he made up that house party, that very specific house party, as a fucking hellacious fever dream? It's too real. The old lady coming in and just fucking doing her Hail Marys while dumping fucking ice on his pecker.
By that rationale, couldn't you conceive that everything leading up to the ice bath is a fever dream?
The scenes with his wife and his family, those feel very false, right? That postal life feels real as fuck. It actually is kind of a scary movie, right? Along the lines of our It's a Wonderful Life theory. If hell is literally just the lives that we're all leading right now, that's brutal. That's a hard truth to accept, is that, just like a shitty job and like,
but that goes to what you're talking about then is simulation theory, and there's a lot of other things. Like, I'll say if this is a simulation, I don't know what the fuck I'm doing in the Matrix.
This is one of the pantheon, your reality is not as you thought movies, right?
Sure,
so yeah, simulation theory, the Matrix, all that kind of stuff plays in this same realm. Absolutely. But I think even movies like that, I think it's one of those things that I like to know, or at least in my mind, I do the thought experiment for myself. I guess everyone draws their own line, right? Even the Matrix, right? There's this fan theory that Neo never actually got out, right? He's just simulating this video game. Total Recall's the same way, right? Where do you draw the lines, man?
Ultimately, like, the key to the movie is that Eckhart quote about
I agree completely.
That is essentially the movie. Like, again, it's weird to put it like
Louis is definitely not a real Livesey.
No, Louis is not a real person.
I agree completely.
Like, no one that isn't in Vietnam.
So wait, let me give you this though. When he first meets Louis, he says he's recently seen his ex-wife. And he goes, a couple of clams, right? Like, he doesn't talk to her. So does that mean his wife is also dead then? Are we to believe his wife is also dead or had a near-death experience?
Now you're getting into the... Now we're talking about the theory of, like, when you enter heaven, it's like, no, like, time is not passed.
I can't remember what comedian it was, and he goes, you know how I know there's no heaven? Because if I go up there and I saw you motherfuckers... I've always thought that was such a funny quote. Like, would you really want to see your neighbors when you went to heaven? Would you be like,
that's
stoked
what
to do eternity with them? Come
on. The metaphysical theory is that, no time will have passed when you have gone to heaven, so you'd see everyone that you loved.
When I go to heaven, I want to be like a Lovecraftian, like, orgy monster, right? Just fucking dicks and orifices everywhere.
Sure
like,
I've never been to heaven. I'm not sure that happens there. See, I think
I'm not sure I'm getting in if there is one, but I'm hoping it's cooler than just
I think
like
the other thing too is like
out.
we all agree that there is like heaven. There's no like consolidated heaven. We all get our own, or
some of us will want our own.
Is it heaven incorporated? See, this is the other thing too that kind of pisses me off. Is like heaven incorporated seems to be a real thing, but like hell is like really personable. I'm like, well, that's nice.
Well, hell's
they're
more
really tailor hell towards you.
So you're saying heaven is like a mall kiosk and hell is like that. We only sell candles that smell like fresh apple pie. That's it.
Heaven's like being in the Mall of America, and apparently hell is the outlets. Like,
We're very specific and punishment in bulk. No, this is the thing. If I don't want to imagine that heaven is like a Carnival cruise ship, and I have to put up with you being like, it's 5 o'clock somewhere. Woo! If I went to country and heard one note of fucking country music, it would no longer be heaven. Like our heavens cannot be combined.
If heaven is a Carnival cruise ship, I will assume I had gone to hell. Like, I did something terrible.
I know that's the second Twilight. That's one of my favorite Twilight zones, right? It's the gambler. And he's all of a sudden like he can't lose. He's getting everything comped on the house. He's getting pussy galore. Not the James Bond character. And all of a sudden, he's just getting mad, right? Because gambling's not fun if there's no risk of losing. So all of a sudden, he's like, what the hell? He's like, this place, I'm not having a good time. I thought this was heaven. And the manager's like, what makes you think you went to heaven? And so his hell was just, what if you weren't a loser? What if you just got every fucking thing you wanted when you wanted? And that's his hell. So this is not...
I think what we're trying to say here is that heaven seems a way better deal than hell. Or hell seems a way better deal than heaven.
What I'm saying is I appreciate the reality bending and skipping of the film. I think that the tone and atmosphere that this movie creates, without us being able to set lines on what's real, because I think movies like this, like that postal scene plays very down and in the gutters, right?
Yeah.
And so that feels meatier to me, right? But movies like this that we don't know if this is really just all a guy dying. I mean, how do you really get oomph from that? I feel like it's one of those endings that most movies would pull and you'd be like, oh, Jesus, what a fucking waste of my time. This one, I don't feel that, right? Because even if it is just all a dream, right? The idea that I do think there's kind of a beautiful idea in this movie, which is that when we meet our ends, right, timely or untimely,
right,
the idea to get to have that extra step to go back and sort some stuff out, I think is kind of lovely, right? Like whether we just go back into the cosmic abyss and are made back into a sperm or an egg and fucking fired out of a, t-shirt cannon dong or whatever. The idea that we get time.
Lovely put.
I'm really kind of a poet.
You're a real poet tonight, man.
I'm a poet at heart, right? But I'm saying the idea to get it go back and, do like the summary of what we've experienced and what mattered to us. And again, I think the movie's a little sloppy on that because I think the idea of the latter, right, the purge drug, maybe he just invents that because I'm sure soldiers were hearing crazy shit like that all the time. But again, I think it's one of those things I've always wanted to be able to convince everyone that he really was a postal worker somewhere. I don't know that I've ever accomplished it, but that's how I watch this movie.
For me, man.
And to be honest, I don't think it matters. I don't think it matters. That's the beautiful part. I don't think it does either, to be honest with you. I'm not saying this is like, well, movie falls apart if he's not actually a postal worker. I'm
saying that the metaphor of him being a postal worker makes sense to me. The him needing to be an actual postal worker makes
it's no not difference. About him being a postal worker. It's about him being a fucked up soldier in New York. I think that mattered to me, right? The stuff with him and the other soldiers and watching this woman try to help him as she watches him deteriorate, I think that has such heft to it that I want to believe that was a reality, right? I'm sure what the movie would say is, who gets to decide what's reality? If you felt heft from it, it has heft, whether it was a, mea culpa or whatever, right?
Yeah.
That's not the right word. That's not what mea culpa is. My bad. I have a mea culpa for saying that other thing was a mea culpa. But, yeah, you know what I mean? I
lost that poet status real quick. Jeez.
So, anyways, about the dong that shoots sperm.
Okay, we're back.
Up into the cheap seats. Yeah. Were we not all once fired at the $3 raffle night? No, I'm just kidding. I just honestly, I just unabashedly love this movie. I love the performances. I love the style. It's just a very uneasy movie. But it has this, it's just dripping with anticipation of something bad. And you really feel emotionally bonded to these guys, right? Not even them, just every character. You want every character to get heaven. And it feels like we don't see that at all, right? Which is kind of a cruel trick of the movie, but I just think it's such a, every time I watch it, I don't, maybe it's just the nature of the movie. I feel like I get a chance to really sit and, think about where I'm at. And you get to have really good conversations with people if you've both seen this movie. I appreciate that so much. This is exactly the kind of movie that makes me love movies, right? Is this one.
Yeah.
What was your final takeaway besides that, of course, he was a real-life postal worker?
I mean, Jacob's Ladder is such a fascinating blueprint for so many movies like it, and just stories in general. Like that Black Mirror episode, The Jacket. Like, there's a bunch of movies that not have necessarily ripped off, but do this kind of vibe. Mm-hmm. But nothing is done quite what I think Jacob's Ladder accomplishes, which is not beating anybody over the head with what I think you could describe as horror elements. Mm-hmm. It's so firmly planted in the psychological thriller concept that it never strays from that. Anytime we get into this horror vibe, the party scene's probably the biggest, probably my biggest part. Other than Leatherface's
the murder hotel, yeah,
yeah. Other than that, those beats are they're done so effectively. Actually, one of my favorite was when he's recovered from his fever and Elizabeth Pena's face changes. It scares the shit out of him.
Yeah.
That actually rocked me. I was like, holy shit.
Yeah.
That's the kind of stuff in this movie that really ticks the box. It really checks the box for me. I'm glad I finally saw this and didn't think it was a different movie. This was a really good movie, and I'm glad that we got to do this for your birthday.
Yeah, it's wonderful. So thank you, and thank Carmelita for this awesome suggestion. I'm on it. We have a list of these movies where it's like, I can't believe we now officially in May have crossed
over 400 episodes. Man.
We have crossed the 400 episode threshold, which seems fucking absurd and insane. And what is even more lovely about that, right, despite all the work and hours in movies, is the fact there's still these beloved movies that we just haven't gotten to yet, which blows my mind. And this has always been on that list for me. So a great start to the pod grovels before Griffey month.
Nope. The pod gifts Griff.
The pod lathers up Griff's.
Nope.
Herculean statuesque physique.
Ugh. All right.
The pod butters Griff's biscuit. One of those. We'll workshop it. You'll see it in the images. Until then, guys, go to patreon.com/filmalchemistpod to support the show and get more awesome content from us.
Guys,
help
tell
us
your
make
friends.
this
Give
show
Griffey
what you
the
want.
Best birthday present.
Bring some pals. Give us the best gift ever.
It's
the
a
YouTube
buck.
Film Alchemist. It's only $1, and we appreciate the buck. The YouTube Film Alchemist, the email filmalchemistpod@gmail.com. Leave those ratings and reviews wherever you find us. Find us on all the socials. Share us. Tell your friends. And remember, get back for the pod goes hog wild on Griffey's succulent pasture of a body.
Why is this about eating you? It's so weird.
No, it's like doing cool stuff atop me.
So what, you're like one of those sushi girls? Is that what we're doing?
Yeah. Maybe.
The pod devout.
I feel
the pod eats sushi off Griff's nips.
I couldn't imagine the Yelp reviews I would get if my body were a food serving tray. I would imagine very, very unkind.
Come for the sushi, stay for the hog.
Come for the sushi. Side of curly black hairs galore. Also sweat. Tons of sweat. Bring your own sauce. Neither here nor there for the Film Alchemist. I'm Josh Griffey.
I'm Alex Dantino.
I hope this is not reality.
Oh, man, that's perfect.